The DeLorean DMC-12 drove its way into movie history in Back to the Future, but there's a lot about the iconic car that you may not know. From its cramped interior to its souped-up engine, this is the history of everyone's favorite two-door time machine. The true story behind the DeLorean DMC-12 is a wild one, and the man behind the iconic car is a huge part of it. John DeLorean was the youngest division head in General Motors history, responsible for the GTO and the Firebird when he was head engineer at Pontiac. After the success of the GTO, DeLorean's personality and lifestyle changed, and tensions between him and other GM executives grew. After leaving GM, the Maverick engineer founded the DeLorean Motor Company in 1975, wanting to disrupt the automotive industry with a sports car that was safe, sustainable, and fuel-efficient. Despite its futuristic look and early interest, though, the DMC-12 wasn't everything DeLorean had promised, and the new motor company experienced funding issues before the factory in Northern Ireland began production. Giorgetto Giugiaro, the lauded automotive designer, based the DMC-12 on his design for the one-off concept car called the Porsche Top Hero. Giugiaro also designed the Lotus Esprit, which became James Bond's underwater car in 1977's The Spy Who Loved Me, suggesting that the DeLorean was destined for the silver screen. In October of 1982, John DeLorean was arrested for drug trafficking after meeting with agents in an undercover sting operation. DeLorean was charged with conspiracy to distribute 55 pounds of cocaine, in what most believe was a desperate attempt to raise funds to save his fledgling motor company. Weeks after DeLorean's arrest, the DeLorean Motor Company declared bankruptcy. In 1984, DeLorean was acquitted by a jury when they ruled that Hoffman and the FBI had entrapped the automotive innovator. But the damage had been done to both his company and his public standing. DeLorean's financial and legal troubles continued after DMC went belly up. DeLorean was accused of misappropriating funds and was sued by investors.
I have no hostility and no desire for revenge. I'm not mad at anybody. I just want to get on with my life.
The British government also investigated DeLorean, who faced trials for fraud and embezzlement. Civil suits settled in the decades following the dissolution of his company drove DeLorean to bankruptcy, and he was forced to sell his New Jersey estate to Donald Trump in 2000. John DeLorean died in 2005 after suffering a stroke. He was 80 years old. The time machine for the Back to the Future trilogy wasn't always intended to be the iconic DeLorean DMC-12. In an early iteration of the script, the time machine was a refrigerator that Doc Brown carted around in the back of a pickup. Director and co-writer Robert Zemeckis told the Santa Barbara Film Festival, "We actually had thoughts of putting a time machine in a refrigerator at one point, but we worried that kids would start locking themselves in refrigerators." Not only was the time machine originally much colder, but an early version of the Back to the Future script almost nuked the fridge 25 years before everyone's favorite archaeologist did so in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. In an early version of the script, the fridge is taken to a nuclear test site, where it harnesses the power of the nuclear blast to send Marty McFly back to 1985. After being told that the production needed to cut the budget by $1 million, Zemeckis and writer-producer Bob Gale eventually realized that a lightning strike supplying 1.21 gigawatts to the flux capacitor was a much more elegant solution. Thus, Back to the Future was saved from the ridicule Indiana Jones experienced after the fourth film in his franchise depicted a lead-lined fridge being used to survive an atomic blast. After Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale decided that Doc Brown's time travel device should be mobile, Zemeckis had an epiphany. Gale told Box Office Mojo, "Zemeckis came up with this idea that it would be cool to use a DeLorean because it could be mistaken for a flying saucer."
The way I see it, if you're gonna build a time machine into a car, why not do it with some style?
The futuristic look of the DeLorean was an important reason for the decision. Zemeckis told the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, "We chose the DeLorean basically because it was the only car that existed that had gull-wing doors and would look kind of like a spaceship to someone in the 50s. When Marty crashes into a barn on Mr. Peabody's farm after arriving in 1955, Peabody's son is quick to make the connection between the DMC-12 and the spaceship, showing his family the cover of the comic book he was reading about aliens from outer space." After Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale decided that their time machine should be a car, automotive giants courted the studio. Ford reportedly offered the studio $75,000 if they used the Mustang in Back to the Future. This wasn't an unreasonable request, considering how the liberal use of product placement helped display the time periods Marty and Doc visit during the three films. Still, Gale was quick to shoot the offer down by saying, "Doc Brown doesn't drive a f***ing Mustang." The studio handled much of the movie's product placement without input from Zemeckis and Gale, but the co-creators of Back to the Future had their hearts set on the DeLorean. They made a licensing deal with John DeLorean in 1989, giving Universal Studios merchandising and commercial use of the car's design for 5% of the revenue. Universal Pictures used 6 DMC-12s and one fiberglass replica for the Back to the Future trilogy. Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale gave their designers little guidance, but insisted that the machine look homemade, as the eccentric Doc Brown had constructed it in the privacy of his garage. Artist Ron Cobb, illustrator Andy Probert, and production designer Larry Poole worked on renderings for the time machine. Mike Chaffee, the vehicle construction coordinator, along with special effects supervisor Kevin Pike and his team, gave multiple DeLoreans a makeover for the Back to the Future trilogy. Keeping the DMC-12s in tip-top shape during production was a constant struggle, as the cars were quite fragile and broke down often during filming. There were 3 cars modified for the first film. Car A was the big star, while Car B did stunt work and Car C was used for interior shots. For the second and third films, more DeLoreans joined the fleet. The fiberglass replica was used for flying scenes, and the B car was modified to fit on the railroad tracks for the third film. Finally, Desert Car No. 1 and Desert Car No. 2 were used for the last movie in the trilogy, when Marty travels to the Old West to save Doc Brown. During his time running his company, John DeLorean had plans to make a turbocharged version of the DMC-12. He even had a contract with Legend Industries, a US-based company that would handle the conversion. Sadly, his plans for a turbocharged DMC-12 were scrapped before the DeLorean Motor Company went bankrupt, as Legend Industries itself went bankrupt while waiting for DMC to fix their production and funding issues. The DMC-12 had 130 horsepower and accelerated from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 10 seconds, which wasn't as good as its contemporary competition. In 1981, one of these competitors was the Porsche 911, another rear-engine sports car that was lighter and faster. Therefore, Universal Studios decided to replace the DMC-12's original V6 engine with one from a Porsche instead. This alteration essentially created a supercharged version of the DMC-12, similar to what DeLorean planned on offering in response to complaints about the car's speed and power.
Does it run like on regular unleaded gasoline?
Unfortunately, no. It requires something with a little more kick. Plutonium.
The original speedometer of the DMC-12 only reached 85 miles per hour, as a 1979 mandate signed into law by President Jimmy Carter capped them at that number to deter speeding. The effects department of Back to the Future had to swap out the DeLorean's original speedometer with one that reached 95 miles per hour, and they also added a digital one to the dashboard for accuracy and dramatic effect. While this might seem like a minor detail, Doc Brown's DeLorean must hit 88 miles an hour to enter the past or future, making the enhancement absolutely necessary. But why was 88 miles per hour the number Zemeckis and Gale decided on? There are some scientific theories about rates of speed and wormholes in the Back to the Future universe, but the truth is apparently much more simple. Gale reportedly told Comic Book, "First of all, we wanted it to be a speed that somebody wouldn't accidentally drive at. The other thing is, it's easy to remember."
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious
Although Back to the Future secured the DeLorean DMC-12 a place in cinematic history, the filmmakers admitted it wasn't always a cooperative star. Bob Gale told Esquire, "As cool as it looks on film, it's by no means a performance car. It broke down a lot, and little things on the car would break during a scene, and would have to wait for the effects guys to repair it." The gull-wing doors on the DMC-12 ruined multiple takes during one exceptionally chilly night while filming the lightning strike scene. The doors of the DMC-12 are supposed to remain up thanks to gas-filled cylinders, but the doors wouldn't stay open in the frigid conditions. The crew resorted to warming the cylinders with hair dryers between takes to keep the doors open while filming. Although Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd became close friends over the years, Fox never expressed kind words about his automotive co-star. Fox joked to Nerdist, "I wish I had a video, a gag reel of how many times I was hit by that freaking door, the DeLorean door. Take after take, it would go whack." Despite not enjoying working with the DMC-12, Fox must have recognized they made a dynamic duo on screen. One of the DMC-12s used in Back to the Future, known as the C car, was cut apart in order to film interior shots of the time machine. The cabin of a DeLorean, especially with all the stylistic modifications, was simply too cramped for a 35mm Panaflex camera and an actor to fit inside. That's why the scenes filmed in the C car was shot on the backlot of Universal Studios, and the background outside the cabin of the DMC-12 was projected. The C car ended up being used for internal shots in all 3 films. Michael J. Fox reportedly hated working with the DeLorean while filming the sci-fi trilogy, and the cramped interior was a source of his hatred. He told Nerdist, "It was the worst thing to drive. It had 2 gears, and I slammed the gears, and my hand would smash into the flux capacitor. My hand would be bleeding. My head would be bleeding. And I had to clean it off to get to the family tie set."
Let's land on him. We'll cripple his car.
Marty, he's in a 46 Ford. We're in a DeLorean. He ripped through us like we were tinfoil.
The hero car, or Car A, which was featured in most scenes and beauty shots from the Back to the Future trilogy, was used by Universal Pictures and Universal Studios for promotional purposes for years. The Back to the Future theme park ride was filmed with the A-car, but after years of use, it was left to the elements in the park and began to deteriorate. Fans took pieces of the car home, and it was in sorry shape. The hero car was given a museum-quality restoration by Terry Metalis and Joe Walzer, who had already made a couple of replicas before convincing Universal to allow a team to take on the restoration. The 20-person team spent over a year restoring the DeLorean to its pristine film star condition, and after the restoration was completed in 2013, the hero car was displayed at the Universal Experience. In 2016, the hero car was loaned to Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles, and it's been on display there ever since. In 2021, the hero car became the 29th car added to the National Historic Vehicle Register because of its cultural significance. The fiberglass replica that was used for the flying scenes in the sequel was put on display at Universal Studios, but was destroyed years later. The B car, nicknamed the Wreckage Car, did all the stunts and was destroyed by a train after it was retrofitted with train wheels for the third film. Parts of the B car were used in replicas, and some panels were hung from the ceiling of Planet Hollywood in Hawaii. The car later became part of a private collection owned by father-son duo Bill and Patrick Shea. Many parts from the C car, which had already been cut apart, were used to build a replica for Universal Studios in Japan. A private company ultimately purchased this replica, and they displayed it at their entrance. The Oxnard car, which was used during filming of Back to the Future Part 3 in Oxnard, California, was displayed at Universal Studios Florida before being put in storage where it still languishes. 2 desert cars were also used while filming the third movie in Monument Valley. One was restored for a private collection, and the other was initially used for parts. What remained was later combined with parts from the C car to make the replica for display in Japan.